Okay, look, final guest for the final daily show has to be Darrell Bricker, CEO of Ipsos Global Public Affairs and our polling guru throughout this entire campaign. Darrell, thanks for coming on the program.
Well, happy to be hitting cleanup, Roger.
Look, let's look at your final numbers because you guys had a big poll in field and it came out yesterday. And here are some top line numbers, Darrell. So let's talk about these first. You're showing a little bit of bump for the Liberals. Conservatives, though, kind of within the margin of error of the poll. The NDP, however, maybe this is significant. Darrell, down 3 points to, again, something short of double digits. So can we take it to the bank, Darrell, that the NDP is going to have a very bad night tonight?
Yeah, they're going to have a very bad night in terms of popular support, but we don't know what that means in terms of seats. One of the things that we saw in the recent Ontario election was the NDP actually, for a number of votes that it had the most efficient votes of any of the three parties in the campaign and delivered way more seats than the Liberal Party, who had way more votes. So even though they're going to have a early 90s type result for the NDP, which is down in single digits, we'll see what it means in terms of seats.
Okay. Let's go on and just take a look at these regional breakouts because we've been talking a lot with you about Ontario. You gave us a sense that this poll for you yesterday was not unimportant because you might start to see some trends in terms of your cumulative sample in Ontario vis-a-vis 905 and the GTA, and especially Metro Toronto. Right now, you have the Liberals at 47% in Ontario, the Conservatives at 39%, and the NDP at 10%.
Yeah, if we're going to see a surprise tonight, it's going to be there. So what our polling is showing is basically what I talked to you about on our last discussion, which is the Liberals are overperforming in the 416, so downtown Toronto, where they're going to crush the NDP. And the race in the 905, that depending on how you count it, up to 50 seats, depending on how far east, west, and north you go, is a lot closer between the Conservatives and the Liberal Party. So that's I think what everybody's going to be watching for, particularly after Quebec. I mean, if the Bloc Québécois holds on to all of its seats, it's going to be a long night.
Darrell, can you explain to me, and we touched on this in an article in the Hub a couple of days ago, for folks we were just talking about, people who aren't, haven't been politically engaged for years, just regionality, the concentration of the Conservative vote and its lack of voter efficiency, how that feeds into this map, in that people look at the top line numbers and I hear reports of it's a horse race, it's neck and neck, but that you have to look at the second slide here and this map of the country to truly understand what the Conservatives need to accomplish to form government tomorrow. Can you sort of, fill in the blanks there for us?
Yeah, so there's two, and you can see it right on the map. There's two elections. There's west of the Ontario-Manitoba border and east of the Ontario-Manitoba border. The problem that the Conservatives have is most of the seats are east of the Ontario-Manitoba border. And Ontario and Quebec are the largest, most populous parts of the country and have the most seats. I mean, 40% of the Canadian population lives in the province of Ontario, so they are very decisive in the election. Interestingly, BC is pretty close. Last time around, the Conservatives won it quite handily. It's starting to look a little bit more like Ontario, but I expect that the Conservatives are going to do reasonably well in British Columbia. But even if they do well, that's more shades of blue as we go to the West Coast. It's not enough.
Mm-hmm. Darrell, when you look at this map, it kind of looks like red states and blue states. You wrote an important book.
It is red and blue. I know that. We could have picked other colors, but
but I'm just saying,
the colors the parties
book
have
called The Big Shift. I mean,
yeah.
If we saw, let's say, this election decided to the east of the Manitoba-Ontario border, when polls close at 9:30 p.m. in Ontario and Quebec. Any concern here that this starts to set up a kind of red state, blue state dynamic with numbers here that you have in Alberta of preference 2-1 Conservatives versus Liberal?
We already have that, Richard. I mean, the thing that worries me the most about the map that you're seeing here is the national unity question is no longer in Quebec, even though, Yves Blanchette has been talking about Canada not being a nation. The threat that was presented by Donald Trump this morning about the line on the map, uh, some of those ideas might become more potent in a conversation in Alberta and Saskatchewan than the federal government is currently prepared to believe.
Yeah.
And the results of this election, if this is what actually comes in, the number one challenge, Mr. Carney keeps saying it's to do with the United States and Donald Trump. Sure, that's right at the top of the list, but I would not take national unity for granted. Even if the Liberals are able to eke out a few seats in Manitoba and Saskatchewan and Alberta, to say that Ottawa speaks on behalf of that part of the country would be, I don't think, seen as particularly credible in those parts of the country. And the issue for Alberta, Saskatchewan, not so much Manitoba, but Alberta and Saskatchewan is not Alberta, Saskatchewan separation, but maybe starting to think more seriously about what their position could be in the United States. And not that it's necessarily going to happen, but it is an existential crisis to the country. More of an existential crisis than whether or not we have a trade battle with the United States. And in the first time in our history since those provinces came into the nation, and remember, that's why we built the transnational railway, the Canadian Pacific, was to bind the country together east to west. And if the West, particularly those two provinces, don't feel that the government listens to them anymore, and Mark Carney proceeds in the same fashion that Justin Trudeau did, I mean, he'll obviously try not to do that, but if he's greeted the same way, we've got problems. Yeah. Because all of a sudden Alberta and Saskatchewan starts having options that wouldn't have ever been considered before.
So how do you bind people, Darrell? Like literally, if it's Prime Minister Carney again tomorrow, and he has next to no representation in these parts of the country, how do you bridge that gap? Can we look back at history in terms of what prime ministers have been able to do to bring the regions together? Like, do you send dispatch a diplomat out to Calgary to try to make inroads? Like, what should the approach potentially be?
Well, we've seen it before. I mean, we've seen it with Brian Mulroney. We've seen it with John A. Macdonald. You have to be prepared to compromise. You have to be able to understand the situation of the parties that are aggrieved and find a way to make sure that their grievance isn't felt. The problem, I think, with this Liberal government, and by the way, Mark Carney's been part of it forever, really, and the people who are going to be returning, as their reaction is, you people are just wrong and you don't get it. And they're very firm in their views. So, the argument will be, I'm going to explain to you why this is a bad idea, and you're going to agree with me. And if you don't agree with me, all of a sudden you're badly intended. We'll come up with what our negative pejoratives are about you. So Mr. Carney, who's used to being sitting in a boardroom and having people, as he hand steeples, just nod their heads, graciously, you're doing wonderful things here, sitting across the table from Danielle Smith and Scott Moe, in which they're saying, guy, you got to do better than this. We have a list of demands. Are you going to be able to satisfy them? John A. Macdonald would find a way to work with that list and find out with a reasonable compromise. Brian Mulroney would be able to. I'm not so sure that that is the impulse of this particular group of people. I will be delighted if I'm wrong about this, because I think that is the existential crisis facing the country after this election, if the results transpire as we're seeing right now. I think we are at a breaking point in this country. And Donald Trump, I know, Roger, you want to say something, but I'll just say this.
No.
I may have said it before, is kind of like that old fairy tale about the emperor's new clothes. It takes a little kid to walk in the room and say, don't any of you people realize that this guy's naked? A country that can't defend itself is completely reliant on us for their trade, has these national unity questions. Why is this line on the map? Saying these things that we take great offense to, and it's just like, okay, what is our argument?
Yeah.
What is our argument? And it can't be that I remember Mr. Dress Up.
Yeah.
It's got to be more of a contemporary idea. And the problem that we've got, and Jenny talked about this really well, and you guys talked about it really well too. If you're an older Canadian, nostalgic Canadian, you look back to that time as being kind of Canada's golden age, and you want to preserve it. So what
Yeah.
you're trying to do is hang on to a country that was working for you. If you're a younger Canadian, I mean, we'll be asking on our exit poll today. I'll be interested to see if we see similar things. But 30% of Canadians today, if you offered them the opportunity to have full American citizenship and have all their assets valued in American dollars, 30% of Canadians would vote for that proposition. Half of the younger population.
Yeah. Amazing.
We've got problems, folks. We really do.
Here,
And just
here.
standing up and saying with great certainty with your hand steeples that, everything is wonderful and you just don't realize it and you're not patriotic ain't going to cut it, guys. That's where John A. Macdonald was very, very intelligent. As much as we want to tear down his statue, he knew that it would take great compromise in order to keep this country together and great humility to do it. I don't feel that coming from the other side right now.
Yeah. So well said, Darrell. And I agree with you. There's a lot of just that usual pious kind of rhetoric. Canada's the best country in the world. It's a great country. It's worth fighting for. But we have real and urgent problems. And I think when it comes to region and age, these age divisions, wow, get ready for what happens next. Darrell,
And
you're
this
going
isn't me. This isn't me, by the way, Richard. You can see it in the data.
I know.
All you have to do is sit back and objectively look at what the signals are that are coming from various parts of the country and the signals that are coming from our surveys on what Canadians, particularly younger Canadians, are thinking about the Canadian advantage or the Canadian promise. And they're not feeling like it's working for them right now, which is why the Conservatives are going to score the biggest the numbers that they've had in this country since 2011 when Stephen Harper won his majority, and as the polls are indicating, may not win.
Yeah.
Probably won't win.
What an ironic situation to think that the boomers may end up, in a sense, squashing their own kind of progeny and their interests for real change. Darrell, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to get you on tonight as the Hub kicks off its live coverage beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern and throughout the evening. We'd love to dip into some of your exit polling data as it surfaces. And again, thank you so much for coming on this program for the last 36 days. We've had such terrific feedback from your analysis and insights, and just a real benefit to our community. So thank you.
Thanks, Darrell.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Harrison. Thanks, Richard.